but the question becomes right off the bat, with Greece on the brink and the crisis persisting through the weekend, how would something like that work? How do you start reprinting an old currency?
Yeah, most likely it would not be the old currency. They would have to develop and design a brand new currency. That process under a typical scenario would take 6 months to, some national banks take as long as 3 years to develop and design. Under a crisis like this, it would still take at least a month to design it, and then anywhere from 3 to 4 months to produce it. Once it's all produced, it would still take another 3 to 6 months to properly and effectively and efficiently roll it out. You need to change out ATM machines to recognize the new bills, the new security features and things like that, all the vending machines and things like that. But it'll be a challenging time, and they can't drop the euro that quickly. It will take a process.
So, as I mentioned, SDRs are allocated to IMF member countries, so not citizens. It is held by countries, and countries can exchange SDRs for hard countries. So they can exchange SDR, or they are allocated SDR as loans. So for example, Sri Lanka is going through a crisis at the moment. They would increasingly receive more special drawing rights if they've not already received so. And as you can see over here, special drawing rights are a basket of currencies, with again the lion's share given to US dollar, and then the euro, and 8% to British pound sterling, the forgotten global reserve currency, 8% to Japanese yen, and 11% to Chinese renminbi. This is just an example of how allocation of special drawing rights is done. So, country A receives an amount in proportion to its share in the IMF, and they can exchange it with country B for foreign currency reserve. During this volatile inflationary environment, countries like India even are selling their foreign exchange reserves to maintain and defend their currency, which is rupee at the moment. So we are increasingly seeing importance of having foreign exchange reserves during times like this.
XRP was created, this actually was created before Ripple existed. The creators of XRP decided there'd be 100 billion units because they saw it as rather than having a smaller number with a very high price, they saw it as something they wanted to be effectively a global reserve currency.
I've given you an overview of what is happening, what is the dominance of US dollar, what is special drawing rights, the global reserve currency evolution. Let's look at what has happened to dollar recently. So again, this is an old infographic. I couldn't find it, or I couldn't create a better infographic, so I thought even though it's old, it kind of depicts the evolution of it. But increasingly, more countries are not using US dollar for bilateral trade. And increasingly, most of that is within the BRICS nation. As you can see with this, more than $300 billion of trade. This is back in 2014. This has now increased to more than $1 trillion and accelerated most since the invasion of Ukraine. As you know, Russia has been basically kicked out of the SWIFT payment system. So they are using and increasingly selling their oil to countries like China and India, who are net importers of oil, using their own currency. They're not using US dollar. And India is now, like China as well, increasingly suggested that they are going to use Indian rupee for global trade settlement. So especially among BRICS nations, there is an increase in not using US dollar.
And people from ECB and Bundesbank debating on the same issue, like why the Bitcoin or crypto market is so dollarized. I don't have an answer for that yet, but my best guess is that every new frontier market is dollarized. If you think Thailand equities, or Brazil equities, China equities, Russian equities that started 10, 20, 30 years ago, they were priced in dollars initially. Now, most of them are traded in local currencies more than in dollars. And there is also a trend of de-dollarization finally, 40 years into this slavery, right? So there'll be some movement outside of dollars, and the world needs a proper alternative.
When you and I and your colleagues appeared before this committee in May, you stated that it was realistic to believe a notice of proposed rulemaking on Section 956 of Dodd-Frank will be released by the end of the year. Is that still your expectation?
Congressman, I don't know if we're going to be able to act by the end of this year. I will tell you that, this is a joint rulemaking involving 6 agencies. It has had intense principal level attention of all 6 agencies. I think we are in general alignment, and I think we're going to move toward a reproposed rule. It may not come till the early part of next year to get everybody.
Fernando, thanks for inviting us to talk about our work. Crypto assets, like Martin said, has been taking up a lot of time and mental energy in terms of thinking about what the next step should be. If I can just start with a big picture sort of framework, which I think you're hearing from each of us, I just want to sort of maybe put it into my own words, which is I think there's 3 things that we probably are all trying to do. You've heard a lot about us trying to agree on minimum standards that can be applied globally, and that's a lot of what you've heard is us working on that. And Martin was just alluding to the second one, which is once we have those in place, we have to work to ensure that those are implemented consistently around the world. You can't have pockets where it's not implemented. It just doesn't work at that point. And then the third piece is, I think you heard it a few times already, is this is an area that's just changing rapidly. Martin referred to 3 different phases. Neil referred to some changes and how hard it is to categorize things. We have to have a framework in place that ensures that we're going to cooperate, coordinate, and share information, because once we put these standards in place, we can't just sit back and go, it's done. We have to be talking to each other all the time. So that's the sort of big picture of what we've been working on. That's where the firms are going to go. And we've seen with events already that that's just not a good outcome. And then we have committed to assessing the implementation by the end of 2025, the assessment of the implementation of our recommendations by the end of 2025. So we're going to let people put things in place, and then we're going to take some action. And I'll stop there.